video now. Our theme for the next few weeks is creating a life of magic. Big magic. It's somewhat like this. There was once a magician on a cruise ship who performed mainly sleight of hand tricks. He had a regular spot on the ship's cabaret evening entertainment, and he was actually really quite good. He was a great little magician, but he had one big problem. His routines were regularly ruined by an onboard parrot who would fly around the room squawking and giving away all of the magician's secrets. He would say things like, "It's up his sleeve, it's up his sleeve," or "in his pocket, it's in his pocket," "it's in his mouth, it's in his mouth." The magician was getting pretty sick of this and threatened to do physical harm to the parrot if it ruined his act one more night. Then one evening, as the magician, he's not a musician, he's a magician, is about to appear in a puff of smoke for his grand finale, the ship hit an iceberg and sank in seconds. Amazingly, the magician and the parrot survived. The only two survivors. The magician was lying on this piece of driftwood in a daze. As he opened his eyes, he could see the parrot staring at him with his little beady eye. The parrot sat there for what seemed like an eternity, just staring at him. The wheels of his little brain were turning around and around, and eventually he said, "Okay, you got me this time. Where's the ship?" That's not the kind of magic we're going to talk about today, but we're going to talk about big magic nonetheless. So we use the brilliance in Elizabeth Gilbert's book, Big Magic. It's about creative living beyond fear. To explore our attitudes, our approaches, our habits that we need to uncover our hidden treasures that each and every one of us has within us. Trust the universe. Just trust the universe. Face our fears and really delve into what those treasures are within us. To create the most magical, creative life. That life that God intended us to live. Absolutely. We were meant to live in the joy and happiness. That's how we came in, as that sweet little innocent soul right there. It came in to be this happy, creative little being. So were each and every one of us. Early on in Big Magic, Gilbert writes, this is her book, she writes some very important questions. And it is a question that one of them that we will explore this morning. She writes this in her book, Big Magic. So this, I believe, is the central question upon which all creative living hinges. Do you have the courage to bring forth the treasures that are hidden within you? Look, I don't know what's hidden within you. I have no way of knowing such a thing. You yourself may barely know. I know your capacities, your aspirations, your longings, your secret talents. But surely something wonderful is sheltered within you. And I say this with all confidence, she writes, because I happen to believe we are all walking repositories of buried treasure. I believe this is one of the oldest and most generous tricks the universe plays on us human beings, both for our amusement and for God's amusement. The universe buries strange jewels deep within all of us, and then stands back to see if we can find them. That sentiment is consistent with so many teachings, and one of the teachings is this ancient Hindu story of the Creator and the angels. They were discussing where to hide man's divinity. Because if you didn't know it, you're each and every one a divine human, a divine being. You're not even human, you're beyond that. A divinity within you that is alive with the energy of the universe. That's who you are. But this is what, in the Hindu text, one angel said, where to hide it, put it at the bottom of the ocean. They'll never look there. God said, no, humans are very smart. Someday they will find it at the bottom of the ocean. Another angel said, then put it at the center of the earth. God said, I suspect one day man will find his way there too. We need a more obscure spot. Another angel suggested the highest top of a mountain. But God felt sure that man would eventually find it. Finally, an angel said, I've got it. Let's place it within them. This is the last place that they will look for it. So it's there, but we really and truly, how many of us go within to know what our true treasures are, the beauty of who we are as individual expressions of this one energy? So back to Elizabeth Gilbert's passage. The universe buries strange jewels deep within us all, and then stands back to see if we can find them. The hunt to uncover those jewels, the courage to go on that hunt in the first place, that's creative living. That's what separates a mundane existence from a more enchanted one. The often surprising results of that hunt, that's what I call big magic. So let's be clear about one thing right now, and before we even begin this series of talks. Because I don't want 3/4 of us leaving and thinking that we're not talking about each and every one of you. Each and every one of us is a creative being. When we say creative living, we're not talking about artists and sculptors and musicians, and that could be their gift. We're talking about so much more than that. So much more than that. So in creative living, in the context of our conversation this month, it's all about how we live our life and how we express the truth of who we are. Not who we told who we are, but who we really are. And we're going to do it by one, a life that is more strongly driven by curiosity than by fear. 2, a life that brings forth from you that which brings you joy and fulfillment, which in turn blesses the world, because there's no such thing as private good. Once, as in the readings, once that good is awakened in you, it blesses everyone around you exponentially. It is just filling up the vibration. It's like the vibration in this room. I can feel the vibration in this room is so uplifting and filled with joy and happiness. So Gilbert gives us this example of her friend Susan, who took up figure skating when she was 40. Well, she already knew how to skate before. She was a competitive skater as a child. But she quit. She quit the sport when it became clear that she couldn't be the very best. She didn't have the chops to be champion. For the next 1/4 of a century, she didn't skate. Her thinking was, Why bother if you can't be the best? Then she turned 40, and there's something on milestone birthdays that can bring things up in us. She was listless, unsettled, out of sorts. See if you find yourself in here. She did a little soul searching and asked herself, when was the last time that she felt light, that she felt happiness, joyous, and even creative? To her amazement, she realized that the last time she could remember was when she was skating. Those feelings were there that whole time. And even though she was saddened by the fact that 25 years had passed, she was curious. That's the word for today. She was curious to know if those feelings could return to her. Again, what is the definition of creative living in our context? A life that is driven more by curiosity than by fear. Fear holds us back. A life where we bring forth from ourselves that joy, that fulfillment that blesses not only us, but it blesses the world. So she followed her curiosity to see at which time it brought her joy and fulfillment as she got on that ice again. And she bought the skates, and she found a rink, and she hired a coach. She ignored the voice within her, you know, that voice that tells you all the reasons why you can't do something. She ignored that voice within her about being so self-indulgent and preposterous to do such a crazy thing with all these little 9-year-old wispy little girls just flying all around the ring. She acknowledged and she ignored her extreme self-consciousness. So 3 mornings a week, she got up before dawn. She got up before dawn, and she would just go skating for the sheer joy of and freedom that she felt when she was doing this. She felt alive when she skated. And because of her friend's experience, Gilbert wrote this in the book. It was a revolution, a literal revolution, as she spun around on the ice. Revolution upon revolution upon revolution. And please note that her friend did not quit her job. She did not sell her home and move to Toronto and study with an Olympic coach. No, she didn't do that. Now, this story does not end with her winning championships. In fact, the story does not end at all. Because Susan is still figure skating 7 mornings a week. Because skating is the best way for her to unfold a certain reality and transcendence within her life. And this is still Gilbert, that she cannot seem to access in any other manner. And she would like to spend as much time as possible in this state of transcendence while she's still on earth. That's all. That's what I call creative living. It doesn't have to be we think everything has to be this major unfoldment of some higher order. No, it can be the smallest little action that brings joy within us. That is such a beautiful story, just for the pure joy and delight. So the question this morning is, what treasure is buried within you? What is it that is buried within you that you have been holding back? There's one thing that you should know about uncovering it and going for it. It can be a little scary. In fact, it can be very scary, because living creatively means stepping out into the unknown and moving into that place of not knowing. And that can throw us off a little, can even hold us back a lot. Here are some of the many ways, though, that we might be afraid to uncover that buried treasure within us. See if any of these could ring true for you. You're afraid that you won't be any good in whatever is nudging at you to do. You're afraid you'll be rejected and criticized, ridiculed, or misunderstood, or worst of all, ignored. You're afraid that there's no market for whatever you are offering, and therefore no point in pursuing it. You're afraid someone else is already doing it better than you. You're afraid you won't be taken seriously. You're afraid that your dreams are embarrassing. You're afraid that someday you'll look back on your endeavors and see it as a great big waste of time. You're afraid that you don't have the right kind of discipline to pull it off. You're afraid that you don't have a work ethic. You're afraid that you're too fat. And Gilbert says this about that. About this, Gilbert writes, I don't know what this has to do with creativity exactly, but experience has taught me that most of us are afraid we're too fat. So let's just put it in there on the anxiety list for good measure. These are the things that keep us back from living creatively. You're afraid you will fail. That's a big one. Oh, I can't do that. I might fail, so what? You're afraid of upsetting your family with what you may reveal. You're afraid that your best work is behind you. You're afraid that you never had any best work to begin with. You're afraid you're too old to start. Get over that. Get over that. You're never too old to start something. Now, I proved it to myself this year in so many different ways of what I didn't think I could do anymore. And you know what? I just did it anyway. And by doing it, all kinds of gifts revealed themselves to me that I would not have ever experienced before had I not taken that step. Well, because we're going to be here, we could be here all day naming these fears, the ego telling us all these things that are wrong with us. It's a bottomless pit. But just to summarize it by saying that living creatively, finding your buried treasure can be very, very upsetting. But here's a very important thought. Our fear is really boring. You feel boring? It's like, oh my God, boring, it never changes. It never delights. It never offers a surprise twist or an unexpected ending. Fear is a note, one-note song, never changes. It's so boring to always be in fear. Repeat it. It repeats itself in this endless loop. So all I can say is stop. And I have to say it to myself, stop. Get over it. Start moving. The world is ready for you. On the other hand, though, we have a creativity within us. It wants to be expressed. We are each one original. We are so original. We each have dreams and perceptions, aspirations within us that are original. But our fears are not original in the least. And so Gilbert asks this: do we really want to build our lives around the most boring instinct that we have? Because that's what a lot of people do. Too afraid to do this? Pandemic really brought it up, didn't it? Oh my God. Everybody was afraid to do anything. I mean, yeah, you had to be a little cautious, I guess. I found a lot of good parking lots to eat in, I'll tell you that, during that pandemic, and I didn't care. You know, but that fear can hold us back. And that doesn't mean though, by stepping out that the fear will go away. Bravery takes so much. It takes so much strength and courage. The truth is we need our fear though. Nature set it up that way so that we can act appropriately when being attacked by that saber-toothed tiger. It's built into our DNA. We have to learn to control it, let it know who's in charge. Ernest Holmes writes this: fear brings failure. It's just that simple. It does. Just because you don't need fear doesn't mean it won't show up, especially when you're trying something brand new. Anyone ever experienced that? This is brand new. You never did this before. Take that step forward. Your fear will always be triggered by new endeavors. Just do it anyway. Whatever that might look like. Gilbert suggests that our fear will be our companion for the rest of our life. It's part of who we are. But we need to build this space for it. I'm going to read you this really cool letter that she wrote to fear. So what do we do when we're faced with fear? Faced with the fear of even trying to discover our buried treasure. Gilbert offers some wisdom in the form of a conversation that she has with fear every time it rises up. This is her conversation. Dearest fear, creativity and I are about to go on a road trip together, and I understand that you will be joining us because you always do. I acknowledge that you believe you have an important job to do in my life, and that you take your job very seriously. Apparently, your job is to induce complete panic whenever I'm about to do anything interesting. And may I say, you are superb at your job. So by all means, keep doing your job if you feel that you must. But I will be doing my job on this road trip, which is to bring faith, focus, courage, and devotion to all my work. And creativity will be doing its job, which is to remain stimulating and inspiring. There's plenty of room in the vehicle for all of us, so make yourself at home. But understand this, creativity and I are the only ones who will be making any decisions on this trip. I recognize and respect that you are a part of this family, and so I will never exclude you from our activities. But still, your suggestion will never be followed. You're allowed to have a seat, and you're allowed to have a voice, but you are not allowed to have a vote. You are not allowed to touch the road maps. You are not allowed to suggest detours. You're not allowed to fiddle with the temperature. Dude, you're not even allowed to touch that radio. But above all else, my dear old familiar friend, you are absolutely forbidden to drive. Do not let fear take the steering wheel of your life. Do not let fear be in charge. It's going to be there anyway. Let it know who's ruling. And remember that you had these treasures hidden within you, extraordinary treasures. and bring those treasures to the light, to share with everyone, to the world. The world, time is ticking, the world is spinning. We are running out of time by playing it small. No, there's no more time for that. You simply do not have that time anymore. And you're going to be doing, or you are doing, what God has intended for you to do and really wants you to express your unique divinity. I affirm that knowing that, believing that, you had the courage not only to discover, but to express your buried treasure. And so it is.